Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and I made this really cute table runner, but I do need to quilt it. But I want to quilt it quick, and I do not want to draw any designs. So I'm going to use tearaway paper. Now, the one thing we don't like about tearaway paper is having to, well, tear away the paper when we're done. But there is a little trick for something small like this that we can do that's going to make that tearaway a lot quicker and a lot easier. Tearaway quilting paper is simply paper that we get to quilt over top. We have this paper, we have the lineup registration marks, we put this on top of our quilt, we quilt following those lines, and then we tear away the paper. The paper is really easy to come off, but any little helping hand is always fun. So the first thing we need to do is decide on the paper that we want and the design that we want. And there's lots of different designs we can choose. I did choose these little swirls because I think it'll go together really good with this rotary cutter. I do have my quilt sandwiched together. I've chosen the paper design. Now I'm going to find the right size. Overlap that paper and match up the registration lines. I do not need an overabundance of paper, so I will trim off what I'm not going to use. And if your runner is small enough, you might get away with just one piece. But in my case, I will need to overlap. So the first thing I'm going to do is glue these two papers together and cut them so they fit my design. So the paper is just a little bit bigger than my pattern. The idea now is we're going to put this over top of the quilt and quilt. But before I put it together, I'm going to quilt the paper. I'm going to follow that design with a free motion stitch on my machine with no thread in the top and the bottom. So that is going to put a pile of holes in this paper. Now this paper is going to get all wrinkled as we do that. So we're going to have to be a little gentle as we put this through the machine. If you have a machine that will tell you if you're running out of thread, you're going to have to override that system to say, no, I do not want you to tell me I've run out of thread. And then just take your time and go over this pattern. So you can see how I've gone around this with just that needle. And if you miss a spot, just go right back over it. Now this entire paper is full of those tiny little holes. Now I'm going to be able to place this on top. This paper is not heavy like printer paper, so it will rip very easily. And now that we've put holes in it, it will rip even easier. So we need to be careful, line that up on top of our quilt, and now we need to secure this on. The little holes that we poked in actually help that paper stay on, and it doesn't slip. It sort of grips this fabric. And because this is just a small table topper, I'm going to just use straight pins and pin through all of those layers. If you don't want to use straight pins, you can use safety pins. By quilting this paper before we put it on the quilt, we've accomplished a few things. One thing, it does make it quite grippy. Another thing, by quilting that paper, it's put that in our memory. So now when we go back to use the thread, it's like we've already quilted the quilt. And third is this paper. It's going to be easier to remove. Now I'm going to be doing this on my sit-down Q20, but you can do this with any machine. And if you have a pattern with straight lines, you could even use a walking foot. I did set up the machine just as I would do any free motion quilting. The difference is I'm going to use a bigger needle, a 90-14. That 90-14 is going to give me bigger holes, and on top of the holes we have, there will be very little paper left to peel off. That paper is just going to want to pop off. So put a larger needle onto the machine. You can even go larger and use a 16. We just want a big needle to leave big holes. I'm going to be quilting a center and then going out. And in my case, I'm going to go from left to right and right to left instead of up and down. Because this is a table runner, it just gives me more freedom to move. But if you're more comfortable going this way, by all means, go for it. And I will be wearing quilting gloves. I've slowed the speed down so that I can get close to the pattern and close to my holes. And my pins are going to be easy to remove as I'm going along. So I'm going to continue stitching one row at a time and get it all done. No marking necessary. By double stitching, the paper is already wanting to come off. There are areas where it's already lifted for me. The first thing I'm going to do is remove larger pieces of paper around those edges. So I'm going to be able to just remove this paper. And it really does come off easy. Now all I need to do is the center. Put a pair of tweezers through those layers. So I'm going to go around each row. And you can see how some are just already coming off. Now I can work one row at a time. And having that extra stitching done really does make that paper come off quickly. And the tweezers will just help lift that so that I can get to it. And if there happens to be a little piece, tweezers will just pull that out for me. We can scoop up all of these larger pieces and toss those in the trash. Now I'm going to take this outside and give it a good shake. That's going to get any of these little leftover pieces sitting in, and I'll be able to view it better. Once I've given it that good shake, if there's not too many, I will just go through, make sure I didn't miss anything. The areas where the thread's going to stick is where the threads have overcrossed. Another thing to help get rid of all those little threads is put on rubber gloves or your quilting gloves and just give it a good brush with your hands. That sticky really does help take off all of those little fluffs. And it's done. I'm not worried about what's on the outside because that's going to be trimmed off. It does look like this has been put on a long arm. It looks great from the front and just as nice from the back. But this pattern, you really can't tell that much. The tweezers that I'm using are just tweezers that I did get with my serger. And they do have that little bend on the end. If you can get a pair like this, you're going to find it's very helpful. They're not too sharp, but they really pick up all of those little pieces if need be. I can now trim this down, put the binding on, and I'm done. This paper is soft enough. We really don't need to do that pre-stitching, but it is a good thing to do to help the memory on that pattern, and well, it also makes it even easier to remove that paper. It's a fun way to quilt our quilts because we don't have to mark our quilts. We just get to put the paper down and get stitching. I'll put a link in the description to my fun rotary cutter video. And as always, thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. let's see what we're working on next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.